customs duties, the company's income tax, and all of that. It highlights all of them, including the VAT, and rests the responsibility of collecting these taxes in the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Since it was not in the Constitution, but there's a statute, which is an Act of Parliament. Would you say that that provision in the Act of Parliament is a nullity?
You see, the trite principle of law is that you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. Now, the Constitution is the grand norm, okay? It's the number one law, it's the foundation. And everybody knows, everybody knows that once any piece of legislation, any act, any statute is made that is inconsistent with any section of the Constitution, to the extent of that inconsistency, that statute, that act is null and void. That's why I keep saying this is not rocket science. It's not anything.
So all subsidiary legislations derive their powers from the Constitution.
That is right. So if you make any law anywhere, by even the National Assembly making a law, if you make any law that is inconsistent with any section of the Constitution or the whole of the Constitution, that legislation is null and void. Every lawyer knows that. Now, if you're legislating on VAT, and it is clear that you don't have the power to legislate on VAT. So the question is, where do you derive your power to make a subsidiary legislation or any kind of legislation at all, touching on an aspect of the Constitution that you have no power to legislate on? So that piece of legislation is null, it is void.
All right, Mr. Babaisa, let me take your mind to an article written by someone who is also a lawyer, J.S. Okutekba, is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He actually says that this controversy over VAT matter shouldn't come up at all because, according to him, he says, in essence, the law has been with us in our federal operations. He says the 1999 Constitution came into being and we have been experimenting since 1999. We need to appreciate that the 1999 Constitution, as amended under the exclusive legislative list, empowers the federal government to make law on tax. When I said, okay, I just want to bring you to some of the issues he raised. What he's trying to say here is that there's no need for states to even start arguing this, that from his argument, that the issue of tax is included in the exclusive legislative list of the Constitution, whatever tax it is, both the excise tax, the company in tax, and even the VAT. He was trying to justify that. Could you go back to the Constitution again, the provision of that Constitution, and tell us if there was no mention of VAT in that Constitution, but when we say excise tax and other things, and other forms of tax, company income tax, can we incorporate all of that together to mean taxation as should be in the exclusive legislative list?
Yeah, with utmost respect to J.S. Okutekba, I read this article. What the Lenin Sig, maybe to my mind, what Lenin Sig was trying to do is just to, douse the fire, try to find a way around it. Well, they can do that. As I said earlier, you can go to the National Assembly, you can amend the Constitution, you can find a political solution to all of this. But legally speaking, the Lenin Silk knows that the kinds of tax or taxes that the federal government is empowered to legislate on through the National Assembly are listed. The Lenin Silk knows that when you are talking about interpretation of statutes, you don't read what is not listed into it. And once certain things are listed, the principle of law is that the things that are not listed means they're excluded. So unless the Lenin Silk will show me, I look at the Constitution yesterday, where the Constitution say, okay, why the Constitution lists? The Constitution didn't say federal government should collect taxes. The Constitution say federal government can collect income tax, listed company tax. You understand? It listed all of that. Why is it that the Constitution did not list VAT? Why did it leave that? So once it's excluded, means that it was not contemplated as one of the taxes that the federal government should collect. It is very strict. When you start talking about the morality of it, the politics of it, the practicability of it, where you can bring tax experts, you can listen to the learners say, but I'm talking about the law of it.
But FRS is actually arguing that it has been collecting this VAT on behalf of states.
No, that takes us to the concurrent list. If you look at item 7AB, it's clear. The judgment is also even covered that if the federal government want to delegate, talking about even if they had the power to collect VAT and they want to delegate that, they should delegate to subnationals. It is a state that should collect taxes, not any other body or no any other entity. And the fact that you have been doing something that is illegal is not an excuse to progress in that error, to progress in that illegality, so to speak. So it is very clear. Even FRS knows that there's a letter. I can't vouch to the authenticity of the letter anyway, but there's a letter I've already seen where there are people written to the National Assembly before and say, we amend this thing, add VAT. They know what we're talking about. They know that they can't collect VAT unless they amend the Constitution. They know that. So the argument of we have been doing it is neither here nor there.
All right. Now, Salas Unu is also here with us. Salas is a lawyer based in the Nigerian capital city. Salas, this conversation for many people takes us back to the fiscal system of fiscal federalism Nigeria is operating at the moment, where there's a centralized revenue collection and administration system.
Controversy is totally unnecessary. Going by the Constitution, like the National Assembly under the second schedule, look at the concurrent list, I'll read it for you, item 7, saying the exercise of its power to impose any tax or duty on the items now, capital gain, income or profit or person other than companies, and documents or transaction by way of stamp duties. The National Assembly may, subject to such condition as may be prescribed, provide that the collection of any such tax or duty or the administration of the law imposing it shall be carried out by the government of a state or other authority of a state, not federal government. So, but in implementation, you find that we federalize everything. It is sad that we federalize so much that power state can generate but not distribute. So you see, we're a nation that are not really helping ourselves. The tax of VAT is actually a consumption tax or services. So you wonder why the federal government want to take tax for someone who ate in a restaurant in Lagos, Port Harcourt, and then share it for everybody. The restaurant owner does not understand federal government in any of their business. All of their needs are catered for by the state, right? So where is the federal government adding value to that business of the caterer or the barber? Or we say the big companies, what value is the federal government adding to them apart from maybe licensing? Yes, the federal government can take a company's income tax, which is clear in the Constitution. The federal government can also take a withholding tax, which is clear. But why will the federal government be struggling to take value-added tax? There has been this video that have been going around and stories about alcohol consumption. We have to be very clear about this. You go to Kano, you find Hisba police damaging beer. Say we don't allow it. And I was speaking with a lawyer friend of mine, and I said, look, so why do you accept value-added tax cuts that also emanate from the sale of this alcohol? Because if you eat from that, you have also committed sin. You've eaten the proceeds of alcohol. So it is even in the interest of everybody to say, okay, we don't consume alcohol in our state. We will not take tax from alcohol. So if you're selling alcohol, move out of my state. So the state targets what it wants to tax and tax it and then run itself by what it gets.
From what you're saying, it means that if the federal government cannot collect VAT in state, can it also legislate on what should be charged as VAT? Because the 7.5% we have as VAT charge now, moving from the 5% it was pre-2020 when the Finance Act was signed into law, Finance Bill was signed into law, was an act of Parliament. The National Assembly passed that law, raising the threshold from 5% to 7.5%.
Yeah.
If it cannot do that, does it mean that it also cannot put a limit or a threshold on what can be charged for VAT? If it is states that have the responsibility to collect VAT, does it also mean that it is states that should determine what their threshold as far as VAT is in their respective states?
Well, like I said, pursuant to Article 7 of the second schedule to the Constitution, the National Assembly have the competence to make laws. But I doubt if they have the competence to also prescribe the percentage of tax. But if you go down to Article 9 of that same provision, it said a House of Assembly may, subject to such conditions as may be prescribed, make provisions for the collection of any tax, fee, or rate for the administration of the law, providing for such collection by a local government council. So you see that the House of Assembly also have a responsibility for fixing the rate, the fees. But the National Assembly can make the general law to ensure the purpose of National Assembly making this law is to ensure that one person is not taxed by two states, right? So that state A will not say our law is different from state B. You get the
But is
point?
that not creating the kind of confusion which many people are saying should be avoided in this circumstance? Maybe Baba Isa can come in here. Because where the federal government does not have the legislative powers in exclusive list to legislate on it, and but from what Silas is saying, they can make a general, covering the field kind of legislation on what can be charged as a rate per state, so that we don't encounter a situation of different rates in
what the
one
law
state
is the state that will make what can be charged.
what can be charged, and different rates and here and there.
Yeah.
And potentially double taxation of where a particular service is produced in a state, you've paid VAT, and maybe it's consumed in another state, you have to pay another VAT for it. That kind of confusion, is that something that this thing we are celebrating might likely also create for us?
See, I admit that kind of confusion might exist. I admit, and I'm not a tax expert, right? I'm a lawyer, and I was invited to talk about the law of it, right? And that is why you see most nations on earth are actually moving away from subnational VAT to central VAT. India had a subnational VAT, but the ensuing confusion is making them now move to a centralized VAT collection. The same thing with Canada, the same thing with Brazil. Brazil still does subnational VAT, but they're all talking about a centralized aspect. You understand now? See, when it comes to fiscal issues in Nigeria, there are a lot of politics surrounding it.
Yeah.
And it's not that these things, this devil in these details cannot be worked out. They can be worked out. We can, just as Silas is saying, the National Assembly can say, okay, let's have a central law. It's not about the law right now. It's about the law. The National Assembly can make laws for the states. That's one thing. That's one thing people have to understand. There are several laws the National Assembly has made that actually affected all the states, that bind all the states. So the National Assembly can do that and say, okay, we make laws for all the states. But the issue is that who collects tax? Who remit tax? That is the main question. It's not about whether this particular percentage should go here or come here. And now, to my mind, to my lay mind, in terms of tax issues, I'm thinking that it's even good. It creates that competition. If I'm paying VAT in Lagos, 6%, and in Sokoto you're asking me to pay VAT 8%, you are killing your own IGR, killing your own business environment. So you see, they will take all this skill. There will be a competition of whose state is actually legislating to pay the lowest VAT. You understand? But the issue of who collects VAT is not fair. See, do you know that FIRS collects about 4% commission?
Yeah.
That's all this fight is about all these things. No? And I read an article, someone was talking about, I was blown away where he was saying that even 3% of VAT goes to the Northeast Development Commission. On what basis? I don't know. Which law permits that? I don't even know. So which percentage goes to the Niger Delta Development Commission? What about the Southeast Development Commission? That doesn't even exist. What about the North Central Development Commission? So the Northeast Development Commission gets 3% of our VAT. On what basis? Which law permit that? Why is IFRS taking 4% commission? That is too huge. That is crazy. Why not take 1%? Why not take even 0.1%? So it's also they're actually struggling for who has the pot, who gets the pot. But everybody understands the law. FRS understands it. They are not even pretending about it. That is why I told you they have written to the National Assembly and say add VAT to exclude legislative list because they know that they have no powers to collect VAT. So let the proper thing be done. The proper thing is one, VAT. It wasn't mentioned as one of the taxes to be collected by the federal government. Federal government stop collecting tax. Secondly, if the National Assembly has to make any law at all, make a law that is uniformly applicable in all the states, but the states are the ones that the Constitution says you collect VAT. Thirdly, let there be some kind of disaggregation. Salah said it and I was smiling. You know, this issue of, okay, we wake up every day and we see people in Kanu. You know, VAT is not all about beer, but there's VAT in beer. Okay? So you go and you're just...
And there's very high level of beer consumption. Not just beer, alcohol consumption in Nigeria.
So people are drinking beer in the south. People are drinking beer in Port Harcourt. People are drinking beer in Lagos. They take the VAT and distribute it to people that say they don't want to drink beer. So there is a sense of injustice. There's a sense of, you know, this things not being fair, things not being done right. It hangs all over. So there are a lot of issues. We can sort it out by starting.
Baba Isa, do you think this is just a matter of collection of VAT or the administration of the VAT collected?
It is.
Could we have a situation in resolving this debacle where we say, okay, let the FRS still collect the VAT, but when you collect, since you've already established, streamlined, perfected the system of collecting this VAT, whatever you collect per state, you remit it 100%, maybe less 1% to the state where you collected it from. Could that solve this controversy?
You're right. You see, the issue is that people don't go to court necessarily to just ask the court to interpret sections of the law, sections of the Constitution. They go to court only when they feel a sense of injustice being meted out to them. So the beginning of this end is that there has been injustice in the collection and the disbursement that states feel, number one, as you mentioned. Now you collect these VATs. If you can, you know, if you collect VAT and you remit 100% to the state, Rivers State will not even notice that there's any law that says that they shouldn't be the one collecting VAT. Because all the VAT goes to them. Okay, people that drink beer, they say, I take your beer VAT. Okay, people that, and let me say something. People that don't drink beer, say, okay, you raise this money, take your own. You understand? It is not about an issue of some governors are saying, be your brother's keeper. That is not the issue. The issue is that go to your states, formalize the tax regime in your state, start collecting VAT. No state in Nigeria is poor. We have leadership that might not be innovative, but no state is poor. We're talking about the other day. Sorry, we're talking about this cattle routes issue and all of that. And I was telling somebody, look, why is the day we talk about cattle roads, open grazing, this? There is no state in the north, even these Fulani governors, that can boast of having an industry that is focused on cattle. Every time we talk about cattle road, which state has an industry? Say Gombe State, say Katsina State, Sokoto State, that is focused on, say, okay, dairy products, the skin, the processing of meat. You don't have it. It's all about, you're talking about where cow will pass, where cow will not pass. That is lack of innovation, and that's what's affecting what?
And that's the second leg of our discussion.
We'll
come to that very quickly. But I want you to react to this, Mr. Ono.
Yeah.
Now, the Lagos State government has also followed suit, you know, from what the rural state government has done, and I'm sure many states are also looking up to also enacting their own or passing their own laws towards VAT. With the appellate court saying stay execution now, do you think this will deter other states who are, you know, thinking towards this direction to say, no, okay, maybe at the end of the day, it may just be an exercise in futility?
Well, that stay of execution only affects the subject matter of the case that was before the Federal High Court. And enactment of laws was not part of it. So that is why you keep hearing people say that that stay of execution does not amount to River State discontinuing their collection of VAT because they've already enacted a law which is valid and subsisting as we speak. So the court cannot say stay the enactment of your law or stay the implementation of your enacted law. It wasn't part of the case.
So when you say maintain status quo ante according to the appeal court, what does that mean?
What does the judgment entail? What does it cover? That judgment is about who, right, can collect tax. And the status quo is neither here nor there. If you go to many states, they have inland revenue services. And that is why we actually pay 7.5% tax now, because the sharing was a concern. They needed to make sure that the amount that goes down to states also increases. So we are the victims. They increased VAT to 7.5% because there's been a case of multiple or double taxation. You're charged by the federal and then the state still tax you. So they're trying to see how they can bring more money and then share. And it's unnecessary. Let the state collect VAT and contribute to the center.
Many have
But
raised
we
concerns.
actually need most of these resources are needed at state level. The federal government is too overwhelmed. Even this education tax that you find third, fourth sharing shouldn't be federal government. All of this case will open a Pandora box that maybe by the time we get to the turn in 2023, things would change. We would have achieved fiscal federalism without actually having a national conference over it.
That's okay. But many people have actually, particularly tax experts, have actually argued that, okay, even though some states will benefit from this kind of act, some states that are not that viable may have, to suffer at the end of the day.
Every state in Nigeria is viable. It's just laziness. Everybody looks to the oil resources. If you go back to farming, is there any state in this country that doesn't have up to 800,000 residents in it? You convert the number to wealth, convert your population to wealth. But it's laziness. Everybody just want to collect from the center, pay salary, pocket the rest. So we need to get states to begin to work. States need to start functioning. They need to start planning. What is your economic advantage? What can I do to earn resources? And then you will find that a lot of states will actually begin to reflect the true strength of their civil service. What you have now is just numbers that they need to steal money. And the states will begin to do things that are necessary. Some governors will stop chartering jet whenever they are traveling, right? Some governors will no longer carry a long convoy. Commissioner will not be putting every year in his budget, he need to buy a new car, get a new
So there'll have to be more responsible
There'll be discipline.
accountability in public finance.